How did the United States transform from a scrappy collection of 13 colonies into a global powerhouse in just over a century? It's a story of revolution, ambition, conflict, and incredible change. Let's dive into the whirlwind journey from 1776 to 1900. It all started with the Revolution. Fed up with British rule and taxation without representation, American colonists took up arms. After a long and brutal war, against all odds, they won their independence in 1783. But winning the war was one thing. Building a nation was another. The initial government, under the Articles of Confederation, was too weak. So the Founding Fathers gathered in Philadelphia and hammered out a new framework, the U.S. Constitution. This revolutionary document established a federal system with a strong central government, a president, a Congress, and a Supreme Court, all balanced by a system of checks and balances. With George Washington as the first president, the new republic began to find its footing. But the real game-changer for American expansion came under President Thomas Jefferson. In 1803, he made a deal with Napoleon Bonaparte that doubled the size of the country overnight, the Louisiana Purchase. For just $15 million, the U.S. acquired a vast territory stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. This ignited the spirit of manifest destiny, the belief that Americans were destined to expand across the continent. The famous Lewis and Clark expedition was sent to explore this new land, opening the door for waves of pioneers, traders, and settlers heading west. But this westward push wasn't without its challenges. The young nation soon found itself in another conflict with Great Britain. The War of 1812, while the war ended in a stalemate, it had a profound impact. It boosted American nationalism, weakened Native American resistance in the Northwest, and spurred domestic manufacturing, making the country more self-sufficient. The federal government's power grew, and a sense of a unified national identity began to solidify. However, the story of westward expansion has a dark and tragic side. The relentless push for land led to the forced removal of Native American tribes from their ancestral homes. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, championed by President Andrew Jackson, resulted in the infamous Trail of Tears, where thousands of Cherokee, Choctaw, and other peoples were forcibly marched west, suffering immense hardship and death along the way. This brutal policy cleared the way for white settlement and cotton plantations in the Southeast, forever staining this chapter of American history. The drive for more territory continued. American settlers poured into Texas, then part of Mexico. Tensions escalated, leading to the Texas Revolution and its independence in 1836. A decade later, the U.S. annexed Texas, an act that sparked the Mexican-American War. The American victory in 1848 resulted in the U.S. acquiring a massive swath of land, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. The continental United States was now largely complete, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But as the nation grew, a deep and bitter divide was tearing it apart: the issue of slavery. The North was increasingly industrial and abolitionist, while the South's economy was dependent on enslaved labor. A series of political compromises tried to keep the peace, but they only delayed the inevitable. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, who opposed the expansion of slavery, was the final straw for the Southern states. They seceded from the Union, and the Civil War began. The Civil War was the deadliest conflict in American history, pitting brother against brother. After 4 years of devastating fighting, the Union emerged victorious. The war ended slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment, and it fundamentally redefined the nation. The period that followed, known as Reconstruction, attempted to rebuild the South and integrate nearly 4 million newly freed African Americans into society. It was a complex and often violent era, with initial progress for civil rights eventually being rolled back, but it firmly established the supremacy of the federal government. With the Union preserved, the nation turned its focus back to expansion and industry. This was the era of the railroad. Transcontinental lines stitched the country together like never before, accelerating westward settlement and creating a truly national market. This transportation revolution fueled a massive industrial boom. Factories sprang up, cities swelled with immigrants seeking work, and vast fortunes were made by industrialists like Carnegie and Rockefeller. This period, known as the Gilded Age, looked prosperous on the surface, but it was also marked by deep social inequality, harsh working conditions, and political corruption. labor movements emerged to fight for better wages and rights for the working class. As settlers and railroads pushed further west, the final tragic chapters of the Native American Wars unfolded. Conflicts like the Battle of Little Bighorn were fought, but the U.S. military's power was overwhelming. By the end of the century, most surviving Native Americans had been confined to reservations, their traditional ways of life shattered. The frontier, which had so long defined the American experience, was declared closed. Having conquered a continent, the United States began to look overseas. Driven by economic interests, a sense of global competition, and a desire for new markets, America embarked on a path of imperialism. It annexed the Hawaiian Islands in 1898. In the same year, the Spanish-American War resulted in the U.S. acquiring Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. This marked a dramatic shift in American foreign policy, from continental expansion to global projection of power. By the dawn of the 20th century, the United States was unrecognizable from the 13 colonies of 1776. It was now a continental nation, an industrial giant, and an emerging global power with overseas territories. This rapid transformation was forged through revolution, political innovation, territorial acquisition, brutal conflict, and technological change. It's a complex legacy, one of liberty and oppression, opportunity and inequality, that continues to shape the world we live in today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through American history fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.